Have you noticed that Pirates of the Caribbean is awesome? It has everything that you'd want from an adventure movie. You know, characters that are really interesting and rich, a storyline that is all over the place, but in a good way, you know, because the characters, the protagonists, they start on an island, then they go to another place, then they split. You know, the whole plot is really intricate. And the movie has a soundtrack that is just gorgeous. And to this day, the whole thing just looks phenomenal. And today we're gonna learn advanced English with this total classic that is Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl. Ah yeah.
This is the day that you will always remember as the day that you...
Every single week we make new lessons just like this one to help you understand your favorite movies and TV series in English without getting lost, without missing the jokes, and without subtitles. So if this sounds interesting to you, you should hit the subscribe button right now and also the bell down below so you don't miss any of our new lessons. Each one of these lessons come with a deck of flashcards covering the most important words and expressions from a scene. Now, practicing with these flashcards is the easiest way for you to remember all this vocabulary forever. But more on that later. Right now, let's watch this scene with Will Turner and Jack Sparrow.
You, Sparrow.
Hey,
You were familiar with that ship, the Black Pearl.
I've heard of it.
Where does it make berth?
Where does it make berth? Have you not heard the stories? Captain Barbossa and his crew of miscreants sail from the dreaded Isla de Muerta. It's an island that cannot be found except by those who already know where it is.
The ship's real enough. Therefore, its anchorage must be a real place. Where is it?
Why ask me?
Because you're a pirate.
And you want to turn pirate yourself, is that it?
Never. They took Miss Swan.
Oh, so it is that you found a girl. I see. Well, if you're intending to brave all, hasten to her rescue and so win fair lady's heart, you'll have to do it alone, mate. I see no profit in it for me.
I can get you out of here.
How's that? The keys run off.
I helped build these cells. These are half-pin barrel hinges. With the right leverage and the proper application of strength, the door will lift free.
All right, I love this scene, and so many of the dialogues, the conversations that Will and Jack that they just have this chemistry. It's really a lot of fun. But I want to ask something about the title of the movie, Pirates of the Caribbean. Is that how I should say it, Caribbean, or is it Caribbean?
I believe both are correct. I also would pronounce the movie like Pirates of the Caribbean, but then you often hear someone say that they went on vacation to the Caribbean. So I don't know if it has something to do with it being more old-timey, or maybe that's the British variant of saying it that people got hooked with the movie, but you can say either one.
Anyway, so just for context, in this scene, we're seeing that Jack, he is in jail because he's basically a pirate and he got caught in this town called Port Royal. And Will, this other character, who is just a person who lives in the town, he actually helped catch Jack. They fought, you know, with like sword fighting, and Jack was then caught and put in jail. So Will, he secretly loves the town's governor daughter. Her name is Elizabeth. Elizabeth was kidnapped. She was taken away by these pirates, the crew of the Black Pearl ship. And in the morning, Will went to Jack in jail to try and get his help to find and rescue Elizabeth. So this is where we are at here in this scene.
You, Sparrow.
Hey,
You were familiar with that ship, the Black Pearl.
What is that? Like I hear that a lot in this movie and all the franchise. What does that mean?
It's just a piratey way of saying yes.
Yeah, and I think it's not just like a pirate term. It's old-fashioned. I believe it's even nautical that you hear that in maybe in the military, people just say like, you know. But this is really common to pirates English, which is sort of like an accent or a style of English, because it has its own like vocabulary and way of sounding. It's kind of interesting. Have like R, right? That sound that they make supposedly, and it has like all these influences from Old English, again, nautical jargon, and Caribbean, Creole, Irish, Scottish. It's like all over.
This makes me think that back in the day, Facebook, you could change the language of Facebook, and they had Pirate English as an option for a language there. I remember for a while I had my Facebook in Pirates English.
I think Wikipedia, if I'm not mistaken, has that option. I could be wrong, but I remember seeing one of these websites where you could switch the language to that.
I should have it for Google Translate as well. They need to add that.
I've heard of it.
Where does it make birth?
Where does it make birth?
Have you heard this expression before? To make birth?
Yeah, it sounds very jargon, like very specific for, you mentioned nautical terms, nautical meaning that has to do in general with sailing. And I imagine just hearing that, you'd think of birth like someone being born, but it's actually birth with an E, right? So if a ship makes berth, it's kind of like it parks somewhere, or it lays anchor somewhere. I think even later in the scene, I heard him say anchorage, meaning state of being parked in a place, being stopped in a place rather than sailing.
And it could be the location too, like where it, I think it says like where is its anchorage, something along these lines. We have already covered some really nice vocabulary in this lesson, but we have a problem. You see, if you don't review these words that we've been learning regularly, there's a big chance that you'll forget them, and that could happen very soon. But if you want to make sure that you can actually use these words in your next conversation in English, I have the perfect solution for you. You can actually have a much more complete experience with this lesson with the Pirates of the Caribbean on the Real Life app, where you get a full interactive transcript of the lesson plus vocabulary practice, where you get to train with all the important words and expressions from this lesson so you can remember them forever. And we know this works because we use a special technology called spaced repetition, which is a scientifically proven way for you to expand your vocabulary fast. To unlock your first full lesson for free, which comes with all these amazing learning tools, just click the link in the description below, or simply search for Real Life English on Google Play or the App Store. You can do it right now and keep watching this lesson over there. So download it, unlock your first lesson, and I'll see you there. Ah, yeah.
Captain Barbosa and his crew of miscreants sail from the dreaded Isla de Muerta. It's an island that cannot be found except...
I find quite funny his Spanish pronunciation.
How did he say it?
Isla de Muerta.
Muerta.
With a very kind of British pronunciation to it.
So he's talking about the crew of the Black Pearl ship. And even this word crew, I think it's another one that you can often hear in this kind of context of like sailing, right? What is a crew?
You mentioned it earlier. It's the group of people who are basically employees of the ship. They make sure that it runs correctly. So it's everyone that works there. And
it could be a ship, I think trains, or an airplane. You also hear that, right? Like the crew of an airplane. When you board, you find all these people wearing these fancy clothes, right? They're the crew of the... Now there's a more obscure expression there that he's using, miscreants.
That means someone who's poorly behaved. It actually makes me think of, in Spanish, like you have malcriados, meaning that literally they were raised in a bad way. They weren't taught proper manners. They're troublemakers, right? I bet in Portuguese you probably have a similar term.
We do, yeah. It's exactly like the one in Spanish, malcriado. And yeah, this makes me think of all these different expressions in English too, like wrongdoers, right, or criminals.
It probably comes from French, but it's a more fancy or more old-fashioned word nowadays, I'd say.
Captain Barbosa and his crew of miscreants sail from the dreaded Isla de Muerta. It's an island that cannot be found except...
So Captain Barbosa and his crew, they come on a ship from the dreaded island of Isla de Muerta. I think that's how he said it. But what is dreaded? The adjective dreaded here.
If you dread something, it's the opposite of looking forward to something. If you look forward to something, you're really excited for it. You're counting down the days and hours and minutes until you get to do it. And dread is the opposite. It's like you can't stop thinking about the thing. It's making you anxious. It's just like you really don't want it to happen. So in this case, dreaded is like no one wants to go there. It's this horrible place.
just the thought of going there, like, no, I don't want to go there. And I'm thinking here, like, just applying this expression of dreaded, with it's more like real life. What would you say that something that you dread doing, that you just find yourself dreading every now and then?
I'm not a big fan of having to do anything that has to do with house chores like cleaning and so on. So I usually dread if it's a weekend where I have to clean the house.
Therefore, its anchorage must be a real place. Where is it?
Why ask me?
Because you're a pirate.
And you want to turn pirate yourself, is that it?
Okay, so this is interesting because they're not using so much connected speech in their lines, but they do a few times here, and you can hear in the phrase "where is it?" Basically, he just connected "is" and "it," so it sounds like "where is it?" And then you can hear Jack using connected speech again when he says "is that it?" or "is that it?" I even think he drops the T sound at the end of "it," so there's that stop T sound. It. Is that it?
And you want to turn pirate yourself, is that it?
It's also interesting how he said, do you want to turn pirate? Which is another way to say, do you want to become pirate? Or we might use the expression even that someone turned evil, meaning that they became evil, they joined the dark side.
They took Miss Swan.
Oh, so it is that you found a girl. I see. Well, if you're intending to brave all, hasten to her rescue and so win fair lady's heart, you'll have to do it alone, mate.
That was a really complicated phrase.
Yeah, back to pirate English. This is what I was talking about. It's kind of poetic and using all these different expressions. So here, hear him saying, so if you're intending to brave all, poetic, right? Like, what does that mean?
If you intend to do something, you're planning to do that thing. And we can use brave. People know brave means courageous, but we can use it as a verb too. So if you are braving something, you're getting up the courage to do that thing. To brave all is kind of like to brave everything that you're going to encounter.
It's going to be necessary, right, to save her. And then he says, like, to hasten to her rescue.
They took Miss Swan.
Oh, so it is that you found a girl. I see. Well, if you're intending to brave all, hasten to her rescue and so win fair lady's heart, you'll have to do it alone, mate.
Now, rescue is basically when you go and try and save someone from a difficult situation, you're rescuing them. And then hasten here is to just like do it quickly, right? To do it in a hurry. So you hasten to do something. Not such a common word, but still you can hear in some contexts. And I think a more common word is haste, right? I think that's a noun, right?
Or an adverb like hastily done means that it wasn't done with like much care or attention to detail. It was rushed.
So yeah, so in the movie, that's what Will is trying to do. And Jack here is just checking to see if he's really committed. And again, about pirate English, you will always hear the word mate, which is, I believe, is not just an expression here. There's literally a position as a sailor, like when you're on a ship. Isn't there like something like a mate?
There's like the first mate is like the second person in charge after the captain. But I think here it's more of a British usage of saying like friend, just a friendly way of speaking to someone. Something that does make it more pirate though is sometimes you'll hear matey, like with a Y at the end.
Yeah.
So that to me sounds more nautical or more pirate speak if you say matey, where mate is still quite common in British English.
I can get you out of here.
How's that? The keys run off.
I help build these cells.
I don't know if you remember in the movie, there's a dog that holds the keys. And he's saying here that the keys run off. Why is he using that expression there, that phrasal verb, to run off?
Run off, that means that someone's gone somewhere away, is quite funny because keys can't run, obviously, right? So he's just saying that the dog that holds the keys went away.
I help build these cells. These are half-pin barrel hinges.
Okay, so now we're getting specific and technical here. Half-pin barrel hinges. What is a hinge in the first place here?
So this thing is a hinge. It's what's on the door that allows it to open and close.
Yeah, and I think he's describing here the specificity of the hinge, just to make clear that he actually helped build it. What's interesting here is the way he's saying the word leverage. So to me, I thought that's how you should pronounce it, leverage. But he said leverage, if I'm not mistaken.
Might be with his more British accent, right? But that is an interesting word too, because it's not leverage, it's leverage. Like we drop one of the E's, at least I would in American English. Leverage is basically getting an advantage over something, or technically speaking, like in physics, is that you're using a long tool to move something really heavy.
I think you started explaining this with a more figurative meaning, right? To have leverage in a situation. So I think that's even a more common application for that word that you might hear in normal everyday conversation. So what is that?
Yeah, for example, you might leverage your English, meaning that you take advantage of your English to get more opportunities. So a lot of people want to learn English because they want to be able to leverage it to get a better job.
Okay, now let's see what happens next in the second part of the scene.
What's your name?
Will Turner.
That would be short for William, I imagine. Good strong name. No doubt name for your father, eh?
Yes.
Well, Mr. Turner, I've changed my mind. If you spring me from this cell, I swear on pain of death, I shall take you to the Black Pearl and your bonny lass. Do we have an accord? Agreed. Agreed. Get me out.
Hurry! Someone will have heard that.
Not without my effect. No doubt name for your father, eh?
This is getting good now because I don't know if you noticed, Jack here, as he said, he changed his mind. And there's a reason for that. Like if you watch the movie, it's when he said his name, like Will Turner. It's actually because Will is an important person here because his blood, which is same blood as his father, would help the crew of the Black Pearl to get rid of their curse. But there's a whole situation there. If you watch the movie, you would know. But it was only when he heard his name. So he said that no doubt named for your father. It's an interesting collocation there. No doubt something. What does that mean?
Nowadays, we would probably use more obviously. So we'd say obviously that comes because of your father's name.
And I also think depending on the context, it could be used instead of absolutely. So you're trying to agree with somebody, maybe?
Yeah, we could use that nowadays. For example, if someone invites you to a party, you could say, no doubt. No doubt I'll be there. Absolutely, I'm going to be there.
Well, Mr. Turner, I've changed my mind.
Oh, it's really interesting that here he's using some incorrect grammar, but this is actually a feature of many accents. So I would say I've changed my mind, but some accents will actually say I changed me mind.
I think especially in British English, but maybe you can find that in the US as well. And it's really informal.
Or the Caribbean.
Right? Or the Caribbean, exactly. Yeah, and change my mind, obviously that's just change my opinion, my decisions, go back and change that.
Well, Mr. Turner, I've changed my mind. If you spring me from this cell, I swear on pain of death, I shall take you to the Black Pearl and your bonny lass. Do we have an accord?
Okay, so he's back with all these expressions again. But if you spring me from this cell, that's the first thing he says there. This is the first time actually seeing this verb used like this.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like I know what a spring is as a noun, but as a verb, it's the first time. So what is that?
Yeah, it's a slang way that you would use. It's very contextual. In this case, if you spring someone from a cell, from prison, you're helping them to escape.
So it has this context of like a prison break. Spring someone from
you could hear
cell.
it common if you're watching a prison series or movie, or even maybe you have a friend that got detention. This is where you get in trouble in school, and maybe after school you have to go and sit and like study or do something rather boring as punishment. And maybe you have a friend that causes a diversion so that you can be sprung from detention.
Anyway, so he goes on to say, I swear on pain of death. It's basically just, promising there that he will do all he can to take him to the Black Pearl and his bonny lass.
This is Scottish, I believe. Bonny lass. Bonny, I believe it means beautiful, and lass is a girl.
Yeah, I think the male for lass could be just lad.
I shall take you to the Black Pearl and your bonny lass. Do we have an accord?
Okay, so with do we have an accord? The question, do we have an accord? I can guess what that means, but also it's not a word that I would hear so often, accord. But it's just like, do you have an agreement, right?
I believe this is, again, it comes from French. It's a very fancy word. It's not one that we would use in everyday English. We'd say, do we have an agreement?
There you go. But I could guess it because there is words like accordance. This is something that I would say to all my students. Like, you don't need to know all words. You can guess a lot. You can intuit. You can just try and make sense of what you're seeing.
I think even based on the context, right? You probably could guess that he means an agreement by that. Or another really colloquial way we say that is, do we have a deal? Probably say that even more often than do we have an agreement? Do we have a deal? Is it a deal?
Right.
Or even just a deal?
So they escape, or Jack does, and now they're off to find a way to leave the island that they're in, to leave Port Royal. And we made another lesson a few years back, and it's a really popular lesson. It's a really great one. I remember I wrote that lesson, and it's one of my favorites from this channel. We're going to leave the link in the description. You can go check it out. But not before testing your listening comprehension one more time, this time by watching this clip, this entire scene without subtitles. Let's do it.
You, Sparrow.
Hey,
You were familiar with that ship, the Black Pearl.
I've heard of it.
Where does it make berth?
Where does it make berth? Have you not heard the stories? Captain Barbosa and his crew of miscreants sail from the dreaded Isla de Muerta.
What does the word dreaded mean? Difficult to find? Ugly? Feared?
They took Miss Swan.
Oh, so it is that you found a girl. I see. Well, if you're intending to brave all, hasten to her rescue and so win fair lady's heart, you'll have to do it alone, mate. I see no profit in it for me.
What does the verb to haste mean? To gather up the courage to do something. To move quickly. To call for help.
I can get you out of here.
How's that? The keys run off.
I helped build these cells. These are half-pin barrel hinges. With the right leverage and the proper application of strength, the door will lift free.
What did Jack mean when he said to run off instead of simply to run? The verb to run simply means to walk fast or to move fast. Now, to run off is to leave a place suddenly. Ah yeah, real lifer. Great job today. And if you had fun with this lesson with the Pirates of the Caribbean, you should check out this lesson next.
This is either madness or brilliance.
It's remarkable how often those two traits coincide.